since then, he's reinvented himself again. I mean, he built Intellius, and he's also done something which no other Indian has done. He's branched out into the mainstream. Now, I might be a little bit extreme here. I mean, when you say mainstream, you normally think about doing different types of companies. He decided he wants to go to the moon. So he's now investing in a company called Moon Express. He's the chairman of Moon Express. Literally, they're building a lunar lander to go and mine the moon. And then he decided he wants to do space flight, so he's now got 2 tickets on the Virgin Galactic. And I won't tell stories about how much money he spent on that. I was there with him when he auctioned for it. But that's Naveen Jain. I mean, in every area, he's been reinventing himself, challenging the status quo, and going where no one has gone before. So why don't you join me, and we'll bat it out. So Naveen, first let's talk about the lessons which all of us here go through all the time, failure. Because I talked about you going from being a rock star to being a rock. Yeah. To tell us about it. What did that feel like, and what did you learn from that?
Well, in some sense, you never feel the failure is something that ever happens. And I really believe that if you define, before you can define failure, you have to define what success is. In my opinion, success is not about how much money you have in the bank, but actually how many people's life you can impact positively. And if that is really your definition of success, I have never failed. In fact, my success from in the last 10 years has nothing but been extremely successful. So in my opinion, I feel that today I'm in a better position and doing more things that are able to impact hundreds of millions of people's lives. Doing the things in a way that has never been done before. Because you have, if you want to make things work where you want to help hundreds of millions of people, you have to think about the world very, very differently. You can't be looking at a problem as an infrastructure problem, because that requires a lot of efforts. So I feel that you have to really look at the problem, infrastructure problem, convert that into a knowledge problem. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about innovation in my 5:30 thing, so I'm going to not discuss as much in detail here. But life as an entrepreneur is something we all have to get used to it. What is an entrepreneur as such? An entrepreneur is not somebody who actually starts a company. Entrepreneur is somebody who actually solves a problem. It becomes all about execution. It's a state of mind. When you see a problem, when you think of a solution and you go out and execute on a solution, then you become an entrepreneur. What I mean by that is, person who sees the problem is just a human being. Person who finds a solution is a visionary, and person who goes out and does something about it is an entrepreneur. So you all have a potential to be an entrepreneur, whether you're inside the company or outside the company. And my hats off to you for all the entrepreneurs here in India.
Okay, you and I have been meeting a bunch of entrepreneurs locally. In my talk yesterday, I talked about mentorship being the #1 problem. What's your view? What have you seen missing over here?
I really think there's tremendous amount of smart people in India, and in fact, I'm just amazed to see not only the great ideas, the passion, and really opportunities that exist in India. What is really lacking is people are constantly reinventing the wheel. They're going through and making the same mistakes again and again that the people before them have made. So I really think you're absolutely right. The biggest change that we really need to create in India is create an ecosystem where the people who have been successful devote their life to helping the people forward. There is nobody in life has ever succeeded, ever, without the help of the society. And the people who are successful, it's not only their responsibility, it is their obligation to give back. And part of the giving back is helping as many entrepreneurs as they can, because every entrepreneur you can help leverages the amount of difference you can make in the society.
Yeah. Between you and I met probably half a dozen companies over here who I could just sit down with for 5 or 10 minutes, go through the strategy, rip it apart, and get them to rethink what they're doing. How do we institutionalize that? How do we fix the problem here? Because you had the same experience, that you sat down with 2 entrepreneurs in the reception area the other day, and you had them rethink everything they were doing. How do we now fix the problem here and get these entrepreneurs that kind of mentorship? Because it's not happening.
So there are a couple of parts of it. One is to really do it on a scalable basis, and the second thing is to do it also on a local basis. On a local basis, you have to be able to create these local clubs where the entrepreneurs meet each other, and the people who have been successful in the past come
your leaders here, what's going on here? Why don't you harass the press? All these people who gave Nayan Murthy front page articles about how he's going to give back. Why don't you call up the media and say, okay, where is the mentorship? Who has he helped over here? Why don't you challenge your leaders? We're seeing this anti-corruption movement. Why don't we now have a technology movement to demand that the people who have gained from us, from our efforts, now give back to us? We need to change the mindset here in Bangalore and in India.
So I think, Vivek, there are two parts to the puzzle. One is you are absolutely right that the people who are successful, but we also have to change the culture of philanthropic activities in India. That today, the Indians, even in US, just don't like to give to philanthropic causes other than for religious things. They will give money to the temple, but they will never give money for anything else. So I think this whole idea.
Tell us the top 3 things you've given to recently.
Huh?
Tell us the top 3 donations you've made. I know you're very humble about it, but do it. Because I want to, the reason I'm asking you to do that is because I want to share with them how the system works, the importance of giving back.
So I think you really have to look and saying that it is the obligation that you have. And you will hear a little bit more about my life and journey. So I grew up very, very poor, where we didn't even have food to eat in this country. And you go back and saying, God has been so kind to us, and I'm simply a trustee of his kindness. And with that kindness comes a tremendous amount of obligation that you feel that you're not going to die with all the debts that you have from the society. So what are you going to do to give back? What are the things that God has given you in terms of skills and resources, and how are you going to utilize them to make a world a better place? And I always think about, if I'm going to go do something, I'm going to do as an entrepreneur. And I started thinking about entrepreneurial philanthropy. So I write for Forbes.com, and many of you can check it out on Forbes.com. It's about scalable, sustainable philanthropy. That how do you leverage the way of doing things so that you can go find a way to help 1 billion people. So I work with incentive pricing. I'm on the board of X Prize Foundation, and really looking at the stuff and saying, how can we go set up a challenge for $10 million, for $5 million, and specifically the problem that needs to be solved, so that you can find the brightest people around the world who are focused on solving the problem that you want solved. In addition to that, you also start to think about what are the exponentially growing technology that are coming in. So I'm also on the board of Singularity University, where I'm looking at the trend that are happening in synthetic biology, the genetics, the artificial intelligence, the neuroscience. And you start to say, can we use the neuroscience to fix education? Because once we know how brain actually learns and processes information, we can fundamentally change the way we teach. Why is it that a child who can go in a video game solve the most complex problem and still struggles in school? And it is not because the kid is dumb, it is because the way we are teaching is just not engaging enough. Similarly, how can we go fix healthcare not by building hospitals, by building the sensors and the software that are able to diagnose the diseases better than the board-certified physician? Similarly, if you want to solve the energy problem, why can't we look at the 70% of our earth is water, salt water? Can we use the salt water and carbon dioxide and create a synthetic bacteria to be able to convert the salt water into a fossil fuel? I mean, you can start to think about almost every problem that we are facing today can be solved. The problem we have is we don't look at the world from the creation perspective. We all are told there is shortage of resources in the world. And what we really need to think about is how do we create the abundance of resources in the world, as opposed to telling people not to use more of this. We say, how can we create so much of it that we can fundamentally disrupt the way we look at the world? Because when there is a access of energy, you can desalinize the oceans. So if you can create access of energy, you can solve the clean water problem. So the point is, you start to think about all of these different problems, and you start to say, what are the innovations in the world that are coming together that we can use? So now I'm, as Vivek was trying to hint, that I'm on the X Prize. I've given several $1 million trying to find the way solution to these problems. Now I'm starting an X Prize India, trying to find what are the biggest problem in India that we can go out and help solve. I don't believe that I have knowledge, or I even would claim to know what are the biggest problems in India. So I decided the first thing we should really do is finding the prize for a prize. Let's really come up and saying, what are the people in the local here? Find what are the biggest problems that need solving. And then let's go out and use the private enterprises to come up with the incentive prizes to solve these massive problems that you can start to help hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah. Let me explain to you how these prizes work, how X Prize works. For example, you remember this BP oil spill, which cost, I don't know, $30, $40 billion, and we didn't do a proper cleanup on it? Well, Wendy Schmidt issued a challenge. Wendy Schmidt is Eric Schmidt's wife, former CEO of Google. She issued a challenge. Whoever could clean it up, I think the initial specs were 2 or 3 times more efficiently in such a period of time, will get $1 million. And then there was second prize, third prize, $1.4 million altogether.
Yes.
Well, there were hundreds of applications. The top 10 companies were selected. Of them, 6 exceeded the goals by a landslide. The winner was about 6 times faster than anything out there. So now this technology, which can clean up oil spills at, I mean, versus, it would just be a 14% efficiency rate. It's 85.6% efficient right now for 100th of the cost.
But there is more point, there is better to that. If you notice, the people who were in the finalists, none of them came from the industry. When you go out and say you have a problem and you go talk to the experts can only tell you about incremental evolution. But if you want the disruptive thinking, you never go talk to an expert. So in fact, in the top prizes for this was won by a tattoo guy who owned a tattoo parlor and a dentist and a mechanic. Imagine that, not the guys who were experts in the oil cleanup. So normally you will find the disruptive solutions rarely come from inside the industry. And I can tell you a lot more about, it is not the people at the helm of these companies are not smart people. Is by definition, their customers tell them what they're doing is what the customers want. And they cannot think beyond what their customers are asking for. So you rarely see the disruptions coming from inside the industry. If you want to see disruption, go out and talk to the people who knows nothing about your problem. As opposed to finding an expert, talk to somebody at a barber shop and ask him, how would you solve this problem? And you'll find a completely, your initial reaction is going to be, you got to be kidding me. And then you think about it and say, you know, the guy has merit. Oh my God, he's genius.
But you know, there are a lot of lessons in here for you folks. That it doesn't mean that you know, just because you're an engineer, you solve engineering problems. Or just because you're a musician, you can't solve engineering problems. I mean, in other words, you can go outside your fields of expertise just based on your own experience in life and solve major, major problems. So there's nothing stopping you. I mean, in India, I've noticed more than anything else that people segregate you, that you're born into a particular type of profession. Maybe it's because of the traditional caste system, that there's more of that thinking over here than there is in Silicon Valley. There's nothing stopping you from going and solving the problems that Naveen talked about of desalination, that you can come up with brand new approaches to it. And just because you have no experience doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing it. It means you have a better chance of thinking outside the box.
Well, actually, just to do a little bit more on that particular thought, I am not even a scientist. I have nothing to do with any of the science. And now today I've spent last 2 years learning about neuroscience. And last month I was speaking at Aspen Brain Forum with 400 neuroscientists, telling them about how neuroscience can be used to change education. Now imagine that. These are the guys who day in, day out, all they think about is neuroscience. And here I was saying, you know what? The thing that you're talking about here and he's talking about here, and if you're able to put them together here, this is how we can apply this to education. Remember, because most of these people are so narrowly focused on their research, they can't think beyond their own thing. So I think coming from outside the industry, you have a way of looking at the problem that none of these people in the industry look at. There is no problem that's large enough. There is no problem that's large enough that the innovation and entrepreneurship can't solve. There is no problem that you can't solve. There is nothing that you put your mind to that you can't do. So just go out there, think big. You can't build $1 billion company by solving $1 million problem. If you want to build $1 billion company, think big of solving a $10 billion problem. So you will be able to build a successful companies.
So Naveen, let's cheat over here. Let's give these people a sneak peek of the Digital Doctor Challenge.
Whew, okay.
I'm trying to pin him down on numbers and exact details. He sort of changes the topic every time I do that. Tell us about that specific challenge. How much money you are putting forward for it, and what is this all about?
I'm not going to fall into that trap here.
Sure you are. Sure you are. You're with me, my friend.
So what I'm actually doing is setting up a incentive prize for healthcare. And the prize is really simple. You look at the most common diseases in India and say if somebody can develop the sensors and the software that can operate on a $35 tablet device, and this device can diagnose the 90% of all the common diseases as good as the doctor, I will give them a prize, and that's going to be a substantial